Like, I'm not talking about like bad things, but like catastrophic type of things that have threatened to put you out of business. What if you could turn those things into actual money and profit? I'm Robert Poole. Welcome to the Growing Your B2B Small Business Show. In this episode, we're going to talk about how you can actually change and take advantage of those opportunities that seem like just disastrous things. And no, I'm not talking about positive thinking and looking on the bright side. We're going to talk about specific strategies that actually help you make money and keep you going and reduce your stress at the same time. And so make sure you stay to the end of the episode. And if you like it, please comment and subscribe. I love hearing about your comments and your feedback, whether you agree with me or not. And also there's a link in the description for our VIP list. If you want more of these kind of videos, you want more insider resources, things the public doesn't have access to, then you want to sign up for that. So again, we've all had bad stuff happen in our lives, and unfortunately more often than not, sometimes it seems like at different times in our lives, and certainly that way in business. If you've been in business for any period of time, more than a day, most likely you've established or had some setbacks, if you want to call them what they are, or some difficulties, challenges, catastrophic crises that even threaten to put you out of business. It's very likely, and that's what we get paid to do in business, is to solve problems and, quite frankly, survive and thrive. And if you can relate to any of that, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about how we deal with those and how to actually turn those events into profitable things that can move your business forward and really grow your business. So stick around. Most of our lives, whether it's our personal life or our business life, we continually have problems, and some are at low-level things, some are at high-level things. And we have, quote, crises and disasters and catastrophes even that they appear that way at the time. When we get through them. But, what I found when I was younger, particularly, I would go through and I'd get through a crisis and go, oh, geez, I made it through that. And, okay, I don't foresee anything. Everything's good for a while. And then, bam, before I even realized it, something else was coming up. And, again, not minor things. I'm not talking about, inconveniences. I'm talking about, geez, this is going to put me out of business type of thing. And, I remember feeling, so frustrated and, I'll admit, depressed and even despondent at times. I thought, geez, the world is coming to an end. As you get more experience, you realize that the world's not going to end, and you're not the center of the world, and your world's not going to end. But, sometimes they can feel like that, and we all know what that feels like. A few years ago, I stumbled upon a concept that has just totally changed my life. I was in one of Myron Golden's Bible studies, and I heard about this concept, and I really started making it my own and implementing it in my life. And I can't tell you what a huge difference it's made in my life in business, and how much money it's made me in the last few years just by implementing this one simple concept. It was really a huge breakthrough for me. So hey, we're all going to encounter bad stuff, and it's a degree, like I said, with anything. But the question is it the kind of thing that you can't sleep at night because you're worried that the payroll checks that you wrote to your employees the day before, they're going to bounce if you don't somehow come up with the money in the morning? I've had those mornings and those nights. And, if you've ever been served with a lawsuit at night, in front of your family, and then, up all night worrying, how am I going to get out of this? Those are the kind of things that threaten to put you out of business and stress business owners out more than we're normally stressed. And we're probably the most stressed out group of people that I've ever encountered. But as they say, hope is not a strategy. And so hoping these things go away is not going to work for us. And so what do we do? Just amazing frustration and, all those emotions that you can think of that I'm sure you can relate to at one time or the other. And, maybe you're just starting out in business, but I guarantee it's coming. So be ready for it. So besides, the emotional cost, what does this actually cost us? And we're all here wanting to learn about how to make money, how to grow our companies. Well, it has a huge effect on our ability to make money, because things, depending on, the gravity of it and how you deal with it, it can really paralyze you. And you know how difficult it is. You're going through a huge crisis and you literally can't think about anything else. You lose time, and sometimes it can be hours, hopefully. Sometimes it can be days, weeks, years even, to recover from a catastrophe. And it's all, in your mind, of course, but, you're dealing with all those emotions, and that costs you a lot of money. And it really affects not only your ability to move forward in a positive way, but it also, affects your decision making. I remember when I was, a cadet at West Point, I think it was my third year, I got news that my father had passed away. I was very close to him, and it was one of those situations where I felt almost numb. If you've ever lost a close relative or a close friend, you know what I'm talking about. I was kind of in a daze for the first few days. And I remember thinking that, well, geez, you know, I was going to totally change the course of where I wanted to take my military career. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go into the infantry. I'm going to do 82nd Airborne, all that good stuff, all the, you know, fancy Army stuff you think about. And when I came to my senses later, I realized, that was not me at all. I'm not G.I. Joe, you know. I mean, I thank God there are people that are, but that's not me. I was better in the logistics area. And so, but the problem was when I was in that state, poor decision making, I almost made the wrong decision. And that's because of the stress involved of the catastrophe and how I dealt with it. And you know, when I started implementing this strategy, a lot of this went away. A lot of those emotions went away. I mean, yes, we all have, you know, the natural human emotion. I can't tell you the difference night and day in how I learned how to deal with problems and catastrophes, quote, in our business. And it's made a ton of money for us since. And, you know, this allows you to gain back the power and the emphasis and the mental and emotional energy that we need to move ourselves forward, to grow as a person, to grow as a business owner, and to grow our companies. And it allows us to get back that power that we suddenly lose when we're taking this situation and dealing with it in the wrong way. So, I mean, how'd you like to have the peace that comes from being able to deal effectively with things like this, be able to deal with those business killer type of problems? You know, how'd you like to reduce stress? I mean, no more staying up at night and not being able to sleep because of this, quote, disaster that's in your life. And hey, instead of getting, you know, upset about a disaster that's going on, then what about thinking about and feeling the emotions of power and how much growth you're going to get out of that? Wouldn't that be a change? Instead of turning something that seems to be very negative into a real positive. I mean, it sounds Pollyanna, it sounds crazy, and again, it's not positive thinking, so stick with me, and I'll talk about this. So, I mean, but what does this, you know, really mean for us as business owners? Well, instead of jumping from crisis to crisis, boy, I solved that one, okay, things are going okay now, bam, I get hit again. Instead, you're able to move forward consistently, and we all know that consistency is the way to make money in business. If we're not consistent in doing the things we need to do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, we're not going to survive in the long term in business. But this gives you the opportunity to do that. And, you know, I'm not just talking about theory here. This isn't some kind of mindset type of thing that people talk about, but they have no experience with. This is something I've personally experienced, you know. I've been in business, in self-employed pretty much for 25 years, and with 2 or 3 years in there that I worked for somebody else, but I was actually commissioned sales, so pretty much own your own business at that standpoint. And I don't think there's anything that has impacted my business life like this has impacted me in 25 plus years, you know, as of this recording, of course. And, you know, it's really amazing to me the power in this, and yet it's so simple. So stick with this, hear me out, and I think if you start implementing this, it's going to change your life like it changed mine. Okay, so let's talk specifics. I mean, what are we really talking about here? Well, first of all, you know, you hear things, you know, you'll see it in all kinds of trainers talk about mindset and all this kind of stuff, and it really used to turn me off. In fact, I still am not a big fan of the word mindset just because it's so overused. I mean, there are, quote, mindset coaches and all that, and, you know, years ago when I went to a Tony Robbins Business Mastery event, which was great, and I loved Tony and, you know, all the people he had there, but, you know, they harped on this idea that 80% of business is mindset. And, you know, I agree. I understand where they're coming from. But I think if we don't understand it correctly, we don't understand the relationship there, then it can be a problem. And so when we're talking about mindset, we're talking about how you run your brain. And you can't separate the personal, how you run your brain personally in your daily life from your business life, because you're the person, you're what makes your business run. And your business is a reflection on you, regardless of whether you fail or don't fail. So how do we work on this, quote, mindset or our mental stability or our mental toughness, the way we deal with things? Well, first of all, you know, we have to realize that bad stuff is going to happen. You know, like I said, when I was younger, I used to think, well, if I just get through this, then, you know, it'll smooth sailing forward, you know. But the reality is, if you've had any life experience, you know that bad things happen and happen and happen. And, you know, you have to accept a certain amount of that. And in business, you know, our primary role is to solve problems. And so if we're going to be in business, problems are part of the daily thing, you know, and it depends on whether they're small problems or, like I said, catastrophic problems that could put us out of business. So we got to figure out how to deal with that and how to use it effectively to grow our businesses. We all have big things that happen to us in life, sort of life changes that lead us from one phase in life to another. Back in 2017, I lost my business partner of almost 20 years, and it was a complete shock. He had a heart issue, just didn't come to work one day, and boom, all of a sudden, my life changed. And it's things like that we don't necessarily, we don't see them coming, and sometimes we do, but most of the time we don't. And those kind of crises and things are part of life, and they're part of business. And again, the question is, how do you deal with it? Well, if you look at any of my past material, I kind of have a 4-step way of dealing with problems, just from a basic business standpoint. It helps keep me on track, Number one, identify the problem. And again, this is one of those things that I think a lot of people talk about, well, you want to spend 90% of the time focusing on the solution, only 10% of the time on the problem. And again, I get where they're coming from, but in my mind, the problem with that mentality and that strategy is that if you focus all on the solution and you don't spend very much time on identifying the problem, I can't tell you how many times I have gone down the rabbit hole and solved the wrong problem because what I thought was the problem wasn't actually the problem because I didn't spend enough time identifying the problem very clearly because, you may think, well, geez, I don't have enough revenue. So that means I need more sales. Well, that means I need to advertise more. And it's like, well, maybe not. Maybe the problem is you're trying to sell your product or service to the wrong people. That's the real problem, not the fact that you're not spending enough money advertising. So number one, you got to identify the problem. And number two, you got to figure out where that problem is coming from. What is actually causing it? Because again, sometimes what appears on the surface as something that's causing it is not really the cause. And so again, we're trying to solve something that doesn't exist or solve something that is not going to have any impact on it. And then, and only then, you need to go on the third step of spending your time trying to brainstorm and solve the problem. And then once you've identified the root problem, the true problem, then you got to look at it realistically. And this sounds dumb, but is this problem worth solving? Because, if it's a minor thing that's not really going to affect your business, it's not going to move you forward, it's not going to increase your revenue, it's not going to reduce your cost, it's not going to move you forward, why are you doing it? Why are you trying to solve it? Let it go. And so some problems we don't need to solve them. And so figure out if it's worth spending the time on it. And then after those 3 steps, then you do the solution. But, this is great and dandy, and I think this works fantastic. I use it in my business. But let's face it, when you get, like I said, served with a lawsuit at night, that could potentially put you out of business and your whole career is going down the tube, it's kind of hard to think through those 4 processes. Well, what's the root problem? Let's face it, the emotions are pretty high at that point. What happens if you have a key employee who's critical to your business and you wake up one day that say, hey, I'm going over to XYZ competitor. And oh, by the way, I'm probably going to take most of our customers with me because they're all loyal to me and not to the company. Talk about that. That'll put you out of business right there. What about any number of things, that, can happen on a daily basis? Some competitor comes up with a product that makes your product obsolete. You've all experienced things, and we all continue to experience things and will experience some things in business, but there's some pretty serious stuff that can happen. And so it's hard to apply that 4-step process to something as significant as that. Because again, the natural human tendency is to go, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, my world's over, I'm going out of business, and just catastrophizing everything. And that's okay. That's a human emotion. That's natural. You got to get that out. And so, so what's the usual, solution that people offer to that type of thing? What do you do when you have those, bad things happen? Let's say, your key employee leaves and goes to a competitor and tries to take everybody with him, the old Jerry Maguire thing, So what do you do? What do people tell you to do? Well, you got to focus on the positives, you got to think about the silver lining, what's good about this, and your brain's going, nothing, and because you're not in a state to be able to deal with that. And I think that's the wrong way to approach it. I tried to approach that many years, but it's really hard to get yourself to sit there and name, well, let's see, it's the positive things and, the competitor's going to make a lot more money. That's not really positive, Whatever you can come up with, that's pretty hard to do. And in my mind, it doesn't work. I've tried it over and over again over the years. It's unfortunate. Well-meaning people promote that, but I don't think it's realistic. So what are we left with? So what we're left with is a choice. and it's how we view things. And again, this is not easy. There is no easy free lunch in life. Anything that's free is usually not worth more than it costs. Free, So how do I deal with these things? How does that change my mentality instead of trying to look for the positive, so to speak? Well, number one, I personally believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that God's got a plan, and He's in total control, and I'm not going to understand it most of the time, but He's in control. But you don't have to be religious or believe in anything for this principle to work, because principles are true, work regardless of where they come from, because truth is truth. But so even if you don't believe in that, that's okay. But if you take the mentality that whatever just happened to you is happening for you instead of against you, it changes the way you look at things. The power that you get from that to really look at something, and it's not that you're looking for the positive in something. What you're doing is you're looking what the positive is on you, because you are what drives your company. You are what drives the growth. If you do not grow as a person, you will not grow your company, period. There is no way that Mark Zuckerberg could have handled the company that he has today with Facebook, Meta, whatever it's called, when he was back, going to Harvard and just starting Facebook. He couldn't deal with it because he didn't yet become the person that could deal with a company the size that Facebook is now. And you can't deal with the company that you dream of right now because you haven't changed enough. I don't have the company that I dream of because I haven't changed enough, because I haven't had the experiences, I haven't had the opportunities that force me to grow into that person. So instead of these catastrophic things happening to us, they're actually happening for us. They're pushing us to grow, because let's face it, nobody likes to do something that's tough, that's hard to do. I mean, business owners have more courage than a lot of people because they do stuff that scares them, is difficult to do every day. But, let's face it, it's human nature is to stand still, not to move forward. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about to kind of clarify. I mentioned that my business partner had passed away suddenly, and, totally unprepared for that, of course. And, we're a small company, and in the past, when we started our company, he took on the role of working with clients and doing some of the sales and that sort of thing. And I gradually moved out of that into more of the technical stuff, operations, hiring, human resources, different aspects of the company that were not necessarily client facing. I wasn't the face of the company. He was the face of the company. And, what changed is suddenly the face of the company was gone. And guess what? I had a choice. I could either, try to sell the company, which we probably would have gotten very little for because of the missing that personality, or I could step up and actually do it myself and become that new personality, take over those responsibilities. And you know what? I was forced into that, and I did not want to do it, trust me. But the difference is 5 years later, here I am talking to you on video, which I never would have gotten on video before because I'm a private person, and I would have always pushed that off on somebody else. But his passing forced me to become the person who can do these videos, the person who can do a podcast, the person who can lead our company, and to be that person that's out in front as the public face of the company. But again, if I wasn't forced to, I wouldn't do it. So his death, as tragic as it was, and believe me, I'd take it today if I could, and I wish he was here with me, but because of this thing that happened, it actually happened for me. And I was able to use that to become more the person I need to be to grow our business into the company that it should be. And I'm sure if you look back on your life, you can think about times that something happened and you know that if X didn't happen, then that wouldn't have led you to Y, which wouldn't have led you to Z. Again, an example, the way I met my wife. My business partner, his wife was very sick, and fibromyalgia and other things, and I was looking in the newspaper one day, that tells you how long ago it was, and I was looking for, I was single at the time too, I was looking for like basket weaving classes or something to do at the local college. Well, let's face it, to meet girls. And in that, I was looking through the classes and I saw an ad for this special class that I thought would help my business partner's wife. Well, she and he ended up going to this class. They met the doctor who was teaching the class. It turns out he was, a holistic chiropractor who does a lot of the work with fibromyalgia. And I've always had back problems, so I figured, hey, I'm going to go to this guy and get my back fixed at the same time. And then, he turned out to be such a nice guy. I got a little bit of a friendship with him. And he said to me one day, hey, I've got a daughter who's single, about your age, and she's in the dating scene. Would you be interested? And I was not sure about the whole blind date thing because that didn't work out too well for me in the past. But I went ahead and I figured, well, this guy's got his hands on my neck. I better be nice to him. And so I agreed to it. And 3 months later, he and his daughter, my future wife, were engaged. And so it all came through a chain of events, something that I would not have done myself, but I got pushed into it. And that's how we need to start viewing these things that come across as catastrophes. And again, it's not looking for what's positive in that particular event, because there may not be a lot of positive in it, let's face it. But it's what it does to you, how much it makes you grow. And when you start looking at it like that and thinking, okay, what is this going to force me to do? How am I going to be a better business person because of this? What skill set am I missing that I need to make sure that I acquire so that this doesn't happen again, or that I can use this situation? All that mindset, and it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, a disaster happens, feel the emotions, go through it, but eventually you got to wake up and say, okay, I may not see how this is really going to push me to change right now, but I know it's going to push me. I know I'm going to grow in some direction, so I might as well grow in a positive direction that's going to move our company forward. So, after that crisis or disaster happens, the next 6 months is going to happen. Once you get hit by a bus, it's going to happen one way or the other. So the question is, are you going to let that situation, are you going to let it work on you and make you a better person? Or are you going to just let it continue to keep you mired in depression and despondency and frustration, that, blaming somebody else for your problems, which in that case, you're never going to move forward and you're never going to change in a positive direction. So take advantage of these catastrophes and these bad things that happen and see and try to find out how they are going to affect you and how they're going to force you to grow. You're not going to see it in the short term a lot of times. It may take 5 years plus to be able to see it, but eventually you'll be able to see, wow, this forced me to grow into this person. And that's the only way that we're going to expand in business. I've forgotten who said it, but it's, your business will only grow to the extent you do. And I really believe that because we are central to our businesses. And if we have the wrong mentality, we have the wrong emotions, we're setting the pace for how fast our business is going to grow. Let me ask you, think about it for a second. 6 months from now, you're probably going to have some disaster, something pretty significant bad happen in the next 6 months. It just happens, But let's say you learn to deal with it differently and you start looking at it from the standpoint of, how is this going to make me grow and change as a person, become that business owner? What's that going to be like? All of a sudden, your stress is reduced immensely because you're not so focused on, this bad thing that happened, and you're more focused on, how can I change to become that person? How is this going to force me to change? Imagine the momentum that you're going to pick up in your business by being able to quickly start implementing new things and start changing right away, and not being paralyzed in fear or questioning, geez, what do I do? Or going into survival mode, which doesn't move us at all. I mean, the amount of stress that you can reduce yourself in business, it's like, my gosh, that's better than money most of the time, although the money's going to come too. So, hey, in summary, take a look at these situations that appear to be catastrophes, appear to be disasters, or just plain bad, and look at them and focus on what they're going to do to make you change. Figure out what you need to do to change, how they're going to force you to do it, things you're scared to do, but things that you're going to be forced into because of that. Instead of looking at something and going, well, let's try to figure out the positive in the situation, because that doesn't work. And also sticking your head in a hole and hoping that it goes away doesn't work either. And hoping that once you make it through this crisis, nothing will ever happen again, which again doesn't work. But I found that this whole concept just absolutely changed my life more than anything in 25 plus years in business. So I'd really encourage you to do that. And I always end my videos and podcasts with this, but if you're a business owner watching, or a prospective business owner, I want to personally thank you for the contribution that you give to our society. Business owners don't get enough credit for the work you do. Let's face it, a hero by definition is somebody who does something that they're afraid to do, but they do it anyway, which is what pretty much a daily thing for most business owners. We do things that are uncomfortable, sometimes that terrify us, and we do them anyway. And that's what a true hero is. So thank you for the contribution for all of us in society that you make. You should be very proud of what you do. And if you found this episode helpful, please, comment. Let me know your thoughts, good or bad, whether you agree with me or not. And Also rate and subscribe, and check out the link in the description below to get on our VIP list, so you can get a lot more inside information on these episodes and a lot of other things we're doing, and good resources that the public doesn't have access to. And I appreciate your time spending with Dave. I know how valuable it is, and I